Guys, welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another gun store vlog where today we're doing another market update analysis. Here going into the midterm elections, what is the state of the industry, availability of firearms, ammunition, and pricing? So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Okay, so for those of you new to the channel, I do operate a gun store here in central Indiana. We've been here for about 9 years, and every few months I like to sort of give an update on what I am seeing as somebody within the industry on the industry itself in terms of availability of product and pricing and general demand trends and things like that. So first of all, of course, we are coming off of 2 years of very heightened demand. Over the past several months, we have seen that steadily decline, and now I am seeing it more or less flatline. If we refer to the FBI NICS data, for those of you who don't know, the NICS Instant Criminal Background Check System is what a gun dealer like myself will use to conduct a background check on over-the-counter sales of firearms in our store. All federally licensed dealers are required to go through the NICS process when selling firearms to the public. If you are selling privately, based on what state you are in, of course, that data will not be included in NICS, but this is a good sort of barometer for about what the general sales trends are in firearms in the United States, at least through dealers over the counter. So if we refer to the NICS data, October reports have just come in. There are background checks of 2,500,000. That is up just slightly from 2,400,000, actually 2,470,000, so up just barely from September of this year. And if we go back to about, let's see, if we go back, actually it's been pretty consistent. So if we go back all the way to January, 2.5 million in January, skipping to March, 3 million in March, going to June, 2.3 million. So it's hovering right around kind of 2.4 to 2.7 million pretty consistently month over month. So really, if we look at it historically, 2022 has flatlined. That trend goes back to July of 2021, which is when I started to initially see the slowdown from the pandemic-induced buying craze that had been going on. Now, we were seeing, of course, a whole lot of inventory being purchased up, and it took supply chains a long time to catch up with that. That's why it was really difficult to find firearms and ammunition specifically, and the pricing of that stuff had gone way up. Another factor there was inflation. Of course, here in 22, we're at over 8%, a national inflation rate of over 8%. So that is also going to drive prices up. Other commodity pricing has been pretty high, as we've seen with gasoline, food, and things like that. So at least we can see the demand trends for firearm purchasing has pretty well declined and stayed stable since the past, I would say, 14 or 15 months. It has been on a pretty flat trajectory, and in that time we are seeing inventory supplies coming back. Definitely in firearms, I go out to my distributor web pages. It used to be during the pandemic that we would have to get everything on allocation. People would call, our sales reps would call with a short list of what they had. We could then select from that short list. That inventory would then come in. Before the pandemic, we could go on to the distributor websites, look at the inventory, pick out the different things that we wanted, add it to our shopping cart, and that was how we would generally get inventory, and supply was very abundant. Through the pandemic and the following, I would say, 12 months since July, that has slowly come back, where now we are at a point today I can say that we can go onto our distributor website and order really any modern production firearm we want to, other than things that are brand new to the market. For example, the new 5.7 carbine from Ruger is going to be tough to get. The new SIG Micro or Macro that has just come out, the P365. So brand new stuff like that on the market is always going to be hard to get for at least 2 to 3 months after it hits shelves for the first time. Small gun stores like myself are usually at the bottom of the list on being allocated those firearms. But when it comes to allocation phone calls on firearms, those are generally the only firearms left on the list. Everything else is widely available. Now, the number one thing I know a lot of people have been wondering about is ammunition. It has been a long dry spell on ammunition. However, when it comes to popular calibers, 9.556, 308, well, I wish I would say 7.62 by 39, that's another issue. That stuff is all back on shelves. For at least the last 3 to 6 months, we have always had things like 9 and 5.56 and 308 and 12 gauge and 20 gauge on our shelves ready to buy. We have not seen a drought or a shortage on any of those common calibers. During the shortage and the pandemic and the months that would follow, ammunition manufacturers had focused all their attention on the common calibers, the things that most people wanted and needed for their defensive use, firearms for hunting, and things like that. And they had sort of neglected the lower, sort of the second tier, I would say 380, 38 Special, 357, 44 Magnum. Now that all of the common caliber ammunition is back on the shelves, I am seeing they're shifting their attention in manufacturing to sort of second tier ammunition. Like I mentioned, 38 Special, 380, things like that. That's now starting to come back. We don't always have 380 on the shelf or 44 Magnum, but more often than not, we're able to at least get in a shipment every single week. It's in small quantities. It'll sell out. We'll get in more the following week, but it's way better than it was even a year ago when we would go for months at a time without even seeing a box of 38 Special. So please let me know down in the comment section if in your area you guys are seeing that kind of change too. You should be at your local sporting goods stores, start to see pretty good availability of 38 and 357 and the 44 and that stuff. Third tier type ammunition, that's going to be like niche calibers, still having a hard time finding things like 22 250, 7mm Remington Magnum, 338 Lapua, 50 BMG, you know, that kind of stuff that has a much smaller market. I don't think that the ammunition manufacturers are quite there yet. Yes, you can find that stuff online pretty easily, but the pricing is still pretty high, mainly due to the demand and the availability. Now, that's the second component of this is, yes, ammunition is now more available, 9mm, 5.56, I'm sure you guys are finding it everywhere, but the pricing has not come back down to 2019 levels. I don't believe that it's going to. If you look at historic trends after fear, panic waves like we saw after the 2008 election and 2012 post-Sandy Hook, you always see a huge surge in purchasing of ammunition. The availability goes way down. It's hard to find. Prices soar way up, usually 300 or 400% over what you used to pay for it. When the calm, you know, the panic calms down and availability comes back, the pricing always does drop back down, which is what we're seeing now, but it never returns to the pre-panic level. So, for example, most of us were paying somewhere between $10 and $14, depending on if you bought in bulk or box by box quantity of 9mm. During the pandemic, I mean, boxes of 9 were getting upwards of $50 or $60 in some places. It was crazy. The pricing has now stabilized down to about $18 to $20 a box, depending if you're buying box by box or in bulk quantity. I can tell you that the wholesale pricing on standard 9mm ammunition at the basic level is around $14 to $15 a box. So with normal markup on that, $17 to $20, depending on where you find it, is going to be normal. That I do not believe is going to really come back down. I do believe that $17 to $20 for a box of 9 is going to be pretty well the level where that stabilizes. Yeah, there might be sales in the future where you get it down to $14 or $15 a box. And I'm sure some of you may have bought in bulk quantity where you're able to get it down to that point. But until inflation calms down and the cost of manufacturing and distribution calms down, I do foresee that the pricing is going to stay pretty well there. And that's where about 9mm pricing has been for about the past 8 months or so, at least since the beginning of the year. It's been at around the $17 to $20 a box. Pricing on 380 and 44 Magnum and stuff like that is still a little bit elevated, again, because of availability, but I do foresee those calibers will probably trickle down a little bit over the next year as they become as available as they used to be, like 9 and 5.56 are today. 7.62x39 is still a little bit tough to find. Remember, there were those importation restrictions on Russian 7.62x39 ammunition, so that's caused a squeeze on the tool ammo and other related brands. Now, I know some other manufacturers like PSA are trying to create their own 7.62x39 manufacturer here in the United States, as well as people are trying to import that from other non-Russian areas like Romania, for example. So hopefully that the pricing of that ammo comes down. Of course, you can still find it on places like Gunbroker, but it's quite a bit more elevated than it used to be, again, before those sanctions were imposed on that ammunition. Now, getting into what might happen, we are sitting at the precipice of the midterm elections. Of course, the House and the Senate are up for grabs. If the Republicans walk away taking a majority, walking away with a majority in either the House or the Senate or both, I foresee foresee that that is going to cause a reduction even further in demand of firearms and, well, maybe not ammunition, but definitely in firearms. So the demand for firearms actually right now is pretty stagnant as we've looked at in the data. But I foresee that to go down even further if the Republicans are to walk away with majority in either the House or the Senate after the midterm election. Of course, one of the main drivers in huge purchasing of firearms is usually panic around maybe something like COVID, or panic around looming legislation. There has been a lot of looming legislation that we've been talking about. There are certain pockets of areas in the market, like braces, for example, that are currently being affected by looming legislation that's potentially coming down the pipeline. Fortunately, also, there are a lot of pro-2A victories that are going on specifically in the Supreme Court. And I think people are getting a lot more encouraged about the outcome of certain things not being restricted or banned, and that may cause a reduction in the tendency for people to want to rush out and buy those things. I am, as a gun dealer, seeing a lot of people try to sell off pistol-related, AR-15s or AKM or Scorpion, or those sorts of types of firearms, traditional sort of two-handed pistols that you would typically find a brace on. I am seeing a lot of people liquidate those, I think out of fear that a brace restriction might be coming down the pipeline. But other than those sorts of things, I'm not really seeing a lot of panic-driven purchasing. It's usually very obvious when that's happening. I've been around prior to the 2016 election. We opened in 2014, so we were still seeing the sort of the tail end of the panic after the Sandy Hook tragedy. So it's usually very obvious when there's a lot of panic going on. Of course, during COVID, there was a lot of panic going on. Not seeing really that at all, even around all the legislation that's going on. So, of course, there are a lot of victories being held in the courts right now, and I think that that's, again, having a positive outcome. If the Democrats are going to walk away with the majority of the full Congress, that might again lead to a little bit more a raise in the demand for certain firearms, as that would start to increase the likelihood that legislation on certain things could happen, or at least would try to be passed through Congress or the courts and things like that. Anyway, that's basically where we are right now in the market. Generally, I would say overall good news for availability and reduction of pricing. When inflation starts to come back down, and again, those distribution costs and everything come down, I think that's when we're going to start to see, hopefully, a reduction in firearm costs and ammunition, or promotions and sales coming on, especially if Republicans walk away with victories in the midterm election. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you off with that without rambling too much more. If you have any questions, let me know by leaving those down below. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe, hit that bell notification button so you are aware when we are posting these videos. I'm going to leave you guys off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.